What's up, Buck Doug with D&E in the Garage. There is a challenge going around YouTube, and D&E has been nominated by the Bearded Jeeper. It's not so much a challenge as it is an invitation for YouTube Jeepers to share their worst off-road trail carnage. And there have been some great ones out there. The Bearded Jeeper talks about when he snaps his Dana 30. That video kills me. The Bearded Jeeper nominated us along with John from JTM Offroad. JTM did the video on where his steering box pulled away from his frame. All really cool videos. I'm going to link those down below. But today, D&E are finally getting around to it. Bearded Jeeper, I apologize it took us so long to answer your nomination, but here we go. My worst trail carnage. I've beat up a lot of stuff off-road, and I've broken a lot of stuff off-road, but my worst carnage happened off-road and manifested on-road. I got to give you the backstory. I'll make it as quick as possible. When I first met my wife, I was living in Jersey where we live now. She was living in upstate New York, 4-hour trip. I was making that trip almost every weekend. Sometimes she'd come down, but I'd go up there a lot. And up in the boonies, kind of where she is, outside of Utica, they have a bunch of mud events. So I had just freshly built Willie, my 2000 WJ, into an off-roader, and I was dailying him. I was driving him the 260 miles up, 260 miles back, and we get up there. It was a fall day. She goes, "Hey, there's this mud event over in Poland, New York. You want to go?" Long story short, we go, we wheeled, we whipped the mud around, we were drifting, we were sliding, we were hitting moguls, we had a good time. Jeep's covered head to toe, couldn't even see out the windshield wipers. So we got it back to her house, I blew it off at the car wash the next day. Monday morning comes, I wake up early to make the trip down the thruway, 90 to 87, down to 287, and I hit Schenectady, and my Jeep's making a weird noise, man. It's just this crazy wobble, and I thought it was a wheel bearing. I thought I must have got mud in a wheel bearing and threw it all out. So I was like, please, just let's make it home. I'm trying to power through it. Sure enough, I'm coming up this big hill on 90 East, right before you get to Schenectady, and I'm just like really laying into it, just trying to get there, and I hear bang, right? And before I even know what happens, I feel the whole Jeep shake, and I see my front wheel going past me right on the highway there. And sure enough, I'd done something off-road where I broke one or two of the studs. Maybe the lugs were over tight. I don't to this day know what happened because I drove the 260 miles up there on them. I wheeled all around that day, but 2 of the studs were broken right off. The other 3, the lugs had backed off. Now I'm sitting, I had to muscle this thing off the side of 90. I'm sitting there, I got my 2 dogs with me, and that day just turned into a nightmare, man. And I know it's not necessarily off-road related, but I am confident that had I not been up there wheeling, I wouldn't have been on the side of the road Monday morning, you know what I mean? That's my story. Eric, you ever had any trouble off-road?
You know what, Doug? I've had some trouble off-roading, and you were there for it. So about 5 years ago, when I got my beloved Barney, he was completely stock, and I loved driving him. I used to not give a care in the world what I did with him because I just thought he was invincible. He had the 249 transfer case. He wouldn't get stuck anywhere. Doug and I used to also work at the same place back then. So on lunch breaks, we used to go off-roading. We used to go on this little light trail right near work, chill out, eat there, go back to work. The one day in particular, we decided to go on a more aggressive trail. One I haven't been to before, but one Doug had been there once before. So we did some adventuring. We went up the trail, and it was like in the beginning, it was just like more overlanding, this like some gravel road, and then you got some points where it was all washed out, and you get some big cliffs and not little cliffs, like little big divots and stuff like that. And we're having a ball. And this whole time, I was not going easy on the Jeep. I was flying through the trail. And Doug was just laughing because I was like almost like NASCARing it. And he's like, "Why are you doing this? You're stupid. You're going to break your Jeep." I'm like, "I don't care. I just got this Jeep and it barely cost me anything. I'm having fun. I'm Jeeping." So we continue on. We found these cool trails. We took you under, like really steep into a little mud hole, came back out. And then we came onto one little trail that basically opened up to a clearing, but there were a bunch of downed trees in front of it. And the clearing looked like it connected to another path we were just on. So you're like, you know what, we'll go through that, we'll turn around, we'll start heading back to work. We won't waste any more time. So we're looking at it, we're like, okay, I was like barely there for like 30 seconds, really, to be honest. I'm looking at it. I'm like, I turn to Doug, and I'm like, do you think we can make it? And I already hit the gas at this point. Over these trees. Well, guys, you can guess what happened. We didn't make it over those trees. We ended up high centering on the cross member for the transfer case and transmission. And we basically spent about 20 minutes, probably 25 to 30 minutes, trying to get this thing unstuck. We broke out the scissor jack, we got rocks, we kept trying to pick it up. I mean, this thing was a stock Jeep, though. I didn't have much in it. I didn't have ratchet straps in the time. It was pretty much empty. Not like what I have in it today. I didn't have my front winch bumper or anything like that. It was stock, bone stock, barely any ground clearance, and I should have known better. But the funny thing is that if you keep with the timeline, we're on lunch. We're on lunch for 1 hour, guys. You have 1 hour lunch break. We were already off-roading for about 25 to 30 minutes. Then we got stuck, and we kept working at it for at least 25 to 30 minutes. We're already over the hour mark. We end up having to call and leave the Jeep in the middle of the woods. We called our buddy from work to come pick us up at the bottom of the trail, meaning the opening to the road. So we had to walk probably a good mile back out to the opening of the trail, number one. Number two, I was so pissed off this Jeep because it started overheating, number one, after trying to get it out. Number two, I couldn't get it out. Number three, I just left the keys in it. I was so pissed off. I was done with the Jeep. I said, you know what, screw it. We'll come back and get it later if it's still here. I'm done. So we ended up going back to work where Doug and I were trying to figure out how we're going to get it out of this stupid thing. Luckily, he had Willie. And so basically, we drove back up with our cousin, and we got to the point where we saw Barney. He was still there. Luckily, he was still sitting there. And we hooked up Willie to the back end of Barney and yanked him backwards. Tried to get his back off the log. And that didn't really work so well. It kept moving us back. We got a little traction, but we couldn't back over the log. It just was hooked up on the transfer case mount, and it didn't want to release. And I'm sure you guys who ever gotten stuck off-roading, you know what I'm talking about, didn't want to release. Kept rocking back, hitting the pivot on the dirt, and just kept pushing you. So we got to the point where we had traction, but we couldn't get it loose. It was rocking the Jeep back and forth, and I was like, we were done. We were all exhausted at this point. I turned to Doug and our cousin and said, you know what? Back up. And Doug's like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I'm going to put it in drive and flooring it and going forward. He's like, really? What if you can't get back over it? I'm like, we'll figure that out after we get over the log. Let me at least see if I can pop over it onto the other side. Because I literally had maybe only about, say, 2 feet of of logs I had to go over, and I was already, they were already centered in my car. So I just had to get over the hump. And lo and behold, I hit it in drive after he yanked me back a couple times, had enough traction, popped right over, and I was over the hump of the little 18-inch, 24-inch log pile. But the one thing I had to get back over the logs after getting to the other side, because that trail actually didn't connect back, didn't connect back, and it was actually a lot more aggressive than I thought. So I turned the Jeep around and reversed my logic of floorboarding the Jeep.
Got himself stuck in there, and that was the only way to get out. Lost a muffler on the road too.
I literally got the Jeep out. I went like probably 100 feet, stopped the car, checked it all out, make sure it would be good to get home, and said, guys, I'll come back and get the muffler later. I went all the way home running open catalytic converter. It was probably the best, funniest story I've ever had in this Jeep. And I've had a couple, but that was just because it was just so many things were going wrong, and we just shouldn't been there in the beginning. It was our lunch break. We should have been smarter and not been off-roading aggressively on our lunch break. And yeah, that was my trouble offloading, and I'm sure I'll have more. I got more stories, but that's my creme de creme on that one. So anyways, Doug, back to you on this.
That's a good one too, right? All right, man. So Eric said we want to thank the Bearded Jeeper for nominating us. Go check out his video on his worst off-road carnage. Go and check out JTM's video, that's crazy. The nominations are getting hard, all right, because a lot of the we know a big community, a big pool of off-road Jeepers, but they've all been nominated. They've all started doing it. So I want to re-nominate Project Dan. I know that JTM nominated him, and he said the video's coming, but that's how much I want to see it, because I know Dan doesn't do a ton of off-roading, but I know he has a ton of experience with Jeeps, like a ton of experience. So his worst Jeep story is probably going to be real interesting. The other one I want to nominate, Jeep Things Outdoors, the ZJ Zebra Jeep. Tell me what's going on with that thing. I know with all the prepping and overlanding and camping you do, with the ton of experience you have, you probably have a crazy worst carnage story, worst trip, stuck in the woods, whatever story. I'd love to hear it. As always, thanks so much for tuning in. I love these kind of challenges because it further brings the YouTube Jeep community together. I've said this before, but it's so cool. I'll be watching one of my favorite channels. I'll look over and like somebody that I know comments on our videos is over there commenting on JTM videos, Bearded Jeeper videos, Project Dan videos, and this whole community. Anyway, man, I think it's cool as hell. I love the community that Jeeps have formed, and now that I get on YouTube doing Jeep and I find out that community extends online, and I just think it's real wild. So I love hearing these videos. Obviously, aside from just nominating 2 other channels, as always, Eric and I want to hear from you guys, your worst carnage. Tell me the story down in the comments of this video, leave it on our Facebook, leave it on our Instagram, and in an upcoming channel update, we'll try to pull some of the worst carnage stories that you guys shared and put them in the video, because who doesn't love carnage stories, you know? Honestly, the video that helped me find JTM, the first YouTube Jeeper that I ever reached out to, was his video where his locker failed on the trail, and that's a carnage video, man. He installed his locker, got all the way out there, and the thing's ratchet and all the hell. I mean, so carnage brings us together, I guess, is the point of mentioning that. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.